Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artist Index and sponsored by our friends at Heavenly Spirits Imports. And yes, it's another special guest. All of our guests are special. I've said that almost 100 times. Almost 100 times. We're getting very, very close to that mark. And but as per usual, I will have our guests introduce themselves and spell their name so that there's no confusion and enter it into the historic record.
Absolutely. So my name is Patti Rego, Pattirego, and I am the district director of Viva Fall River. Do you want me to tell you what Viva Fall River is all about?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Viva Fall River is a fairly new initiative. It's incubated, or my fiscal agent, I should say, is the One South Coast Chamber, which is really wonderful because it, even though it's Viva Fall River, so much of what I do is about the South Coast and about the region. And I love my friends in New Bedford, and I'm always looking for ways to model a lot of our revitalization efforts on some of the successes that New Bedford has already modeled for the region. So Viva Fall River is a creative economy initiative. And we are basically looking to leverage the assets that Fall River has and this momentum, this creative momentum, and this air of collaboration that we have kind of coursing through the city right now, leveraging it to revitalize not only the economy. Specifically, my district is the downtown district, which is, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's part of the Mass Development TDI program. And so we focus most of our revitalization economics wise on downtown, but then I also work with the amazing arts and creative community in Fall River to sometimes work with the businesses, but also just to create wonderful public art and community projects that can kind of change the narrative of the city and help us to help ourselves.
Wow, that is a lot.
Elevator pitch, but that's basically what we do.
That's a lot. I remember when I was the interim marketing director for the Office of Professional and Continuing Education for UMass Dartmouth. Entering the phone was tough. And, they put in a new courthouse across the street. We were in a Cherry and Webb building. There was a woman named Virginia. I think she was British. I can't remember her last name. She was a whirlwind. She was trying to set up a gallery downstairs in the old Cherry and Webb, and next door there was a little art park, I guess they call them now. It was a little pocket park.
That's one of my favorite little hidden gems in downtown, and I actually that park, it's called Jerry Lawton Plaza, and it's private, and it's public space, but it does still have that same art that you're referencing, and I love it. And I actually have been doing some work downtown, which we can get into, but this is part of the work where economy and art intersect. So that park is not really accessible sometimes because the foliage. And it sounds so simple, but tree cover, those kinds of quality of life issues, if nobody's taking care of that stuff, you can't see the art. So we've cut it back, and which helps kind of with the lighting. It also helps with, speaking of quality of life, people not going there, defacing things, doing things you don't want them to do in public spaces where families, you hope families will come. But that's one of my favorite little areas. And then if you go around the corner to the side entrance of Cherry and Webb, which I remember going into when I was a child with my grandmother, the Cherry and Webb is still there. And that building is such a special building. And that bottom floor is completely still able to be a gallery. And it's a spot that I'm constantly trying to reinvigorate because it's a wonderful space. And the building itself is, storied.
Right. Yeah, it lends itself to that. And one of the things was that, with my previous life, having been in Fall River a lot, having Fall River based family, and with a lot of history and such, I got to know the city quite well. And the differences in the cities, it's funny, at one time Fall River is very vibrant, while New Bedford is very sleepy. At another time, Fall River is very sleepy, while New Bedford is very vibrant. And it never seems like they synchronize their vibrancies. Thank God they don't synchronize. Well, they have at times their sleepiness. And then, then there was the Millbillies who tried to get things going.
Yes, which I was at that time. So I did leave. I grew up in Fall River, but I left in 1998 to finish college in New York. And so I ended up on and off living in New York for 17 years with a short stint in Providence in between. So I always kept a pulse on what was going on in Fall River. And when I would visit, I had, really good friends here that were affiliated in one way or another with the Millbilly space. And I loved it. And it was very, very guerrilla, very raw. And I think like, and I'm sure, people in New Bedford organizations, artists could speak to this better than I could as a kind of an outsider looking in. At some point, though, it's like you can't retain that level of rawness forever. You either grow or you evolve in some way. And I have no idea what the issue was. I suspect it had to do with, the mill and that's the biggest problem we all face in the South Coast is artists live workspace. Is how do we, and I'm overusing the word incubate today, but how do we help people to have a safe space to do their art? And we all know being a working artist is not, you can't pay market rate housing. So how do we encourage people and just kind of give them the tools to succeed? And space is an issue, but we have plenty of mill space.
Well, in New Bedford, I mean, we've been quite fortunate in the last 15 years at least. I guess the biggest boost has been in the last 5, where Hatch Street, just going along, dum-dee-dum-dum in its own little way. Then the Co-Creative Center, which was an initiative. But then again, there's that downtown-centric mentality that had to be broken. And the difference geographically, and it makes a big Richard Nesbitt, I believe, the Culture of Geography. That's a good book to read. Fall River is a crossroad town. The major north and south, east and west arteries go through Fall River. New Bedford is a terminal town. Okay, the centers would start laughing. Yeah, it's been dead for years. No. It's a peninsula. So it's a peninsula. So you have to drive. You have to have a purpose, a reason for being here. You just can't really drive through. And the part that you drive through is not really the part you'd really want people to see. It's like the back room. But along comes the Kilburn Mill. Developers or redevelopers, that's breathing a lot of vitality. We have a mayor that I remember when he was first elected, people were saying he has a lot of art in his office. This has got to be good. So I think
my God, that should definitely be a prerequisite. That should absolutely,
I think it is a mental thing, not crazy mental, but it is a mental thing, a cultural thing. You can and you will. And I used to love the Fall River motto that they tried changing. I mean, it was "We'll try." No, it's a silly motto. No,
it's back to "We'll try" again. In case you were wondering.
Great. I was on the Fall River Chamber of Commerce board of directors.
It's funny. The more that I work in Fall River, I understand that "We'll try" is not as funny as it sounds. It's actually and I do like to make it here. But I can tell you why, because I think art takes on a different, there's many facets to art, we all know, but here it's definitely, we still have a lot of manufacturing. But so interesting, I want to go back to what you said about, terminal town versus crossroads. You would think that we would be able to leverage that to get people to stop and then go. But I think that's been what you would think would be such an asset has really been more of a detriment, that people just keep driving by. So that is part of the public art murals that we've been doing, or that other groups have been doing, the collective we, I'm talking, not Viva Fall River specifically,
right,
is to kind of get people to take notice. I mean, we have this battleship. I mean, people do come here for specific reasons, but we definitely haven't had a lot of success in branding ourselves as like a place where you can do multiple things. And, like, oh, I'm going to spend the afternoon here, a destination. That's really what
right.
my job, I'm tasked with creating downtown destination. And then, like, how does that success at the heart of something radiate out to the rest of the city, which has so much diversity, the bio reserve. I mean, and I think part of the problem with Fall River too is that people don't even know what they don't know. They literally don't know how great it is.
Exactly. I mean, most people only know it from City Hall, the most unique in the United States. It's above a highway.
Unique in a lot of ways, inside and out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a brutal architecture. Yeah. And yeah, a lot of goings on there. So it has that. We have the Braga Bridge, which has become iconic, whether you want it or not. And also the battleship.
I mean, the battleship is such a treasure. And unfortunately, a lot of residents haven't even gone. And I've talked to them. I mean, they are, the Battleship Cove is a great cultural resource. So as part of, we can talk a little bit more about the Fall River Arts and Culture Coalition, but Battleship Cove is definitely one of our key members. And we have talked to them a lot about how do we bring residents in? How do we make residents feel that these things are theirs? We're not just saying, hey, other people out here, come here. Pride in place is a huge part of community. It's a huge part of community building. So taking pride in the things that are amazing, and then the things that aren't so amazing, how do we leverage that pride into action? So much of arts and culture is community building as well.
Oh, it is. I lived in Portugal for about a year in Figueira da Foz on the mainland. It's the Silver Coast. Smack dab in the middle of the coast. Largest beach in Europe, largest beach in Portugal, largest sand area. Wow. And very, very vibrant town. I mean, if you want to really like get your engines revving as far as what culture and economy, how they intersect, you've got to go to Figueira. In fact, I'll send you a couple of video clips or direct you towards where you can get them, because it's like, one of their slogans was Figueira for everyone. So it's not just for the tourists. It's not just for the the older citizens. It's not just for the newcomers that are coming in. It's for everyone. And it was a really, really great campaign. The other thing about Fall River too is that it really suffers more than New Bedford from front window. In retail, the front window, the old days, that's why Macy's windows were so famous. Okay. Yep. And that's why you have window dressers. All right. We suffer from the front window. You see industrial on both sides. And it doesn't look very inviting to get people who know nothing about it. Like, oh, honey, let's take this exit. That kind of thing. Oh yeah,
look at this. I want to go there. I mean, exactly. But funny enough, and maybe it's because I used to live somewhere else and I used to approach the city from the Braga, but when you're coming over from Somerset, Swansea, there is something beautiful about the hill. I mean, we're a city of hills, which is really something.
Hills, mills, and pork pies.
Some people would also say salmon pies, any kind of meat pies. We do love our meat pies. And so, I mean, there's so many beautiful things that dot the hillside. But again, I've learned to love the City Hall building, that brutalist architecture. I think it's super misunderstood. And I wish that we could get a little bit more love for the brutalist architecture. I just think, when you take down an amazing City Hall, or, I mean, who knows if it was amazing, I wasn't there, but when you take something down and all the buildings around it are so different, you can't just plop something that's so out of place without any kind of context or any kind of, and I think, brutalist architecture isn't meant to do this, but it kind of feels like it's not of the people. And that's why not just because my district is downtown, I do a lot of programming in that area And I mean, around, we're right on the you know, the whatever they call the press. The, I don't know. I'm like, it's Friday afternoon. My words aren't coming, but
I
right on
know.
the apron of it. I mean, and I've
Right.
even talked about doing it on the upper level. We just surround it with people and with community, because I want people to feel like this can be your downtown again. And not the
Right.
downtown that people talk about back in the day, which I'm sure was lovely, but you know, everything through rose-colored glasses, right?
The boat sailed, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, you have to embrace City Hall because it's there, and the other City Hall is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no longer there because that was the concept at the time. That was the mindset of the time. And you know what? The mindset of today is going to be judged by the future citizens of Fall River.
Super true.
They're going to say, why did they do that stupid thing? Why didn't they leave that alone? Why,
and I mean,
why?
We always have that we're like our high horse of hindsight, you know, and but you can't possibly know those things. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure who thought it was a good idea to bisect, to just cut downtown in half. But listen, these are obstacles. These are things that I'm dealing with on a daily basis downtown. But I mean, I try to, you know, we're using art and community to kind of, you know, bring people back into this area. And I mean, I think the more that people care about things, the less people are more likely, whatever these other factions are, to like disrespect places. You know, you have to have your own pride in place if you want other people to have pride in your place. It sounds so like dumb, but it's like, it's the truth.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's been a while. And let me tell you, I had a friend of mine ask me to accompany him to Fall River because he really wasn't familiar with it. And he said, there's just something about the vibe there that it's like a dangerous city.
Yeah.
And just like Brockton and Taunton, it's become one, and so on and so forth. Well, I had just returned back from living in Portugal, and I know that they had been doing some work, and I pulled off the highway, and it's like, I have no idea where the heck I am. And he's, what do you mean? Where's the viaduct? Where's the Renshaws? I mean, I don't recognize this area at all. It's all gone. Everything's all gone. And it's like totally wide open. It's like a huge scar.
It took a little time to get used to.
The traffic patterns are as bizarre as the ones getting onto I don't know if they still call it the Slates Ferry Bridge, but that was, I mean, it's a great bridge and stuff, but oh my God, over the river and through the woods to find your way.
They kind of traded one issue for another. So not having those, you know, different levels, which I always thought were kind of cool. It was very like futuristic, but it did deter from the visual connection between your downtown, your centers of commerce, and your waterfront. We still have not figured out how to really leverage our waterfront. And that's not my district. And there are people who know far more about it and have far more at stake. I just think that you have to gear whatever happens down there to what people do down there, and what they do is recreation. They just want to be, and they just want to enjoy. But you know, obviously there's money to be made and whatnot. And we're always looking for ways to connect downtown. Fall River is walkable in some senses, but in others not. You know, like there are areas, but we just need to do a little bit of a better job connecting them. And that's where I do turn to a lot of my artist friends and to the art community, utilizing something maybe that isn't as sexy in the art world, but wayfinding. Like, how do you use wayfinding? How do you use artistic interventions? How do you use public art to connect people to places, connect people from one area to another, to entice them to explore?
It defines the areas, because one of the things that is not, that we lost from when I was a kid in New Bedford is a sense of villages, neighborhoods. So neighborhoods are actually villages, because living in Figueira da Foz, there's Praia de Buarcos. I mean, it just goes on down the line. Okay. Everybody has pride of place, a sense of place. Everything is walkable. I didn't have to have a car for an entire year, which was absolutely wonderful. A majority of the businesses, I would say 90% of the businesses, are locally owned. Yes, they do have the modern amenities like a little mall. It's run by the French, by Leclerc. And in fact, Leclerc's is a huge department store there. And yes, they have a big supermarket, Lidl's, which is German. It's, you know, it's Europe. But the point being is that it's walkable, it's safe, and now Portugal is dealing with its colonialism. Okay, the after effects of its colonialism. So the complexion of the population is changing. You know, you have people from Timor, Macau, São Tomé, Mozambique, Angola, Cape Verde. I mean, you've got them from all those, you know, colonies and more. And then you have an influx of the British who think it's paradise because they can live there cheaper than they can in England.
It's their new Tenerife.
It is. Yeah, exactly. And so every place has its day and its time. And what's happening now in New Bedford, I don't know about Fall River. Well, I know that there's a growing, and a lot of people get confused by the Hispanic / Latina or Latino designations.
Latinx.
But there's a lot of Latinx coming in. There's a lot of little businesses. And that's another thing. These newly arrived immigrants are creating their own economies.
Oh, yeah. And they need to be embraced. They will not be ignored. They have to be embraced. And I am so excited that you brought this topic up, because this is one of my passion projects that I'm going to bring back. One of the things I loved about, I lived in Astoria, and I loved Queens. I used to live in Queens, and what I loved about Queens and in general is that they identify by their neighborhoods. They're still Queens proud, but they are very invested in their neighborhoods. And you have what you're talking about, like in villages in Portugal, you have like your mainstays in your neighborhood, your cobbler, your grocer, the people you go and get your dry cleaning, your laundry place, and you are all interconnected. Like if you don't see that person for a while, you're wondering, like you care. Okay. So Fall River to me was always like that, like very neighborhood. We had a lot of neighborhood groups, like strong neighborhood groups. And I think that I think that was great. But I think, you know, those the people in that age out, okay, they're no longer completely representative of the neighborhoods which they say they're representing. So you've got a lot of young people, a lot of Latinx, you've got you know, just Portuguese people, Cambodians, people from who are just new, who are not being represented in these groups. And those groups started to kind of, for lack of a better word, die out. And COVID, you know, completely extinguished the final few that maybe had like a lot going on. Some of the groups kind of just turned into like places where you'd go to, like, you know, group trips. And that's not what a neighborhood association is. It shouldn't be a place where you organize group trips. So my new thing that I'm really starting to understand, if you want people to care about stuff like citywide trash or citywide issues, it has to start literally your own plot of land, your neighborhood, and then it ripples out. So I'm really interested in re-engaging the neighborhoods. And one of the ideas I'm really looking to bring forward this winter is I personally do not know enough about Latin culture and the Latin restaurants that we have. I have no real connection to them. I don't speak the language. I don't even know enough to really even feel like like that I would feel comfortable. And I think a lot of people, if I don't feel that way, then I know how other people might feel. And you all know that fear or uncertainty kind of automatically, a lot of people around here will just push that away. So I want to kind of do these like neighborhood dinners where we like have, you know, maybe 3 courses. You go into like in my district, I have a Latin food restaurant. I want to go there. I want you to tell me about your culture, about this food. And then through those interactions, you'll probably find out that we have a lot of the same foods. They're just called different things. Your family's just like my family. Your neighborhood's just like my neighborhood. You know, we can work together. And I think that, you know, the power of food, which is a cultural thing, it's not maybe, you know, the power of art, like that kind of stuff, those are all commonalities that we share. So I think getting back down to the neighborhood level is super, super important for both New Bedford and for Fall River, to really like, just for people to start to feel represented, to feel like you are actually part of the community and not just being talked about.
Yeah. And again, you know, people forget their immigrant status because
Oh, that's so
We
true.
were
I
all
know
we
what
were
you're
all
saying.
immigrants. I
Yeah.
remember when my mother's side, they were coming over. I used to say you could probably put like a tick mark on the leg of a kitchen table as to how many times that table was handed down as people were
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
Okay, and then a lot of immigrants changed their names or anglicized their names, or
Yeah.
because they were embarrassed of who they were, because it was brutal. It was
Absolutely.
brutal. I mean, there was prejudice, beyond belief. And then so we
It's
had
so
all those
strange to
those
see
things.
that again now, though, to see that same thing happening, it's just that's a really weird thing of the human condition to like you were once in that position and now you feel that way about
Now
other people,
it's okay for you to do it to someone else. Yeah.
you
So
know?
art, culinary food is part of art.
Food is a
That
great
is
connector. It really
that is
is.
an excellent way of bringing people together. Food festivals primarily. I've heard of places that have food trucks that are just strictly ethnic. In other words, you can't come in with your food truck if you're selling generic,
Yeah. Like
goods.
hamburgers.
You're like hamburgers. No, 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 no. We want Nicaraguan food. There was the Filipino family that people begged during Fall River Celebrates America, which is one of the largest locally produced, community produced festivals on the East Coast in its day and
Yeah,
age.
in its heyday, absolutely.
And there's this one Filipino family that only showed up for that. And people said, why don't you open a restaurant? No, no, we do fine here. This is, and it's like, people like, no, you don't understand. We want your food whenever we want it. We don't want to wait a year to get your food. So, that is very, very important.
Absolutely. And I think,
The, uh,
and that's what, like what I said earlier about Viva Fall
mhm.
River, like those are the assets. Like I might not be able to unite people on certain things, but we all like food. Like, and those are the types of things like finding ways. And I mean, and so much of my work is like really basic. It's not like this high level strategy. It's literally finding the power of connection.
It's
And
grassroots.
and I hate using the word meeting people where they're at, but sometimes it's literally going to their neighborhood and meeting them where they're at. We're not even talking philosophically. We're talking geographically meeting
Yeah,
them where they are at.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Because it does them honor. Why should they come to
absolutely.
you? What reasons do they have to leave the comfort of their zone to come to you where you're at? They're not comfortable there.
Because I want to, them to be part of my thing. I mean, a
Right.
lot of times I don't ever
Yeah.
want people to feel like I'm checking off a box or I'm including people to make
Right.
something look good. Like that for me is not at all attractive. That for me is just it takes away from like the pureness of when you have an event in a neighborhood you've never been to and you just walk away feeling like, oh, I feel really good. I met some good people. Like if that what you're doing doesn't give you that feeling, you shouldn't be doing it. It's
Exactly.
not,
I mean,
you know.
as we're speaking, reminded me, the first 6+ years of my life I spent in New York City. My mom left my dad. That was the circumstance at the time. We went to move in with her uncle. We lived on the east side right across the street from Mount Sinai Hospital. People who listen to this podcast have heard that.
That's way east
almost all the
side.
time. Yeah.
Way east side.
East gate of Central Park was my backyard, my playground.
Beautiful.
Circumstances changed. She moved. So I always refer to it as a reverse Jefferson. We moved on down to the west side onto Columbus Avenue. And, of all the other memories that I have, I still remember the Latin festivals, probably more likely the Puerto Rican festivals. And as a little kid, they may have been pigs, but they look like hogs to me. The roasted pigs.
Yes.
They were like enormous. And all I remember was the music, the smell of food, the metal toys that were coming out of Japan, where you wind it up and the monkey's got the cymbals and all those kinds of crazy
But how
things.
wonderful to be able to share those. I mean, there's so many things I learned. I mean, there's so many things I learned there, but then I was, when you were talking earlier about food festivals, the Guatemalan Kite Festival that happened. I missed it this year, but let me tell you, that was what an incredible experience that was the one year I went to learn that. I know nothing about, and I think that's the first thing too. People need to be, it should be okay for you to say, I know nothing about XYZ culture. As long as you're coming at it from a pure place. I knew nothing about that. And I left there, my God, like just my head full of, like, it was just so amazing to be able to not just lump this country in with that's what we do as Americans. We lump one country. Oh, it's all Central America. They are all very different. That's like lumping us in with like Iowa. That would be
Yeah.
insulting to some people too,
Or
you know?
Portuguese. I mean, it's the Luso world or Portuguese. I mean, it's the Luso world they don't
Oh my
call it the
God, the
Luso
small
world for
little
nothing.
Luso world is fractured. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. And then you
so
said something way
honoring those
back,
differences, you know?
way back. You said about art and economy or art and I mean, those are those are um, terms that don't splice together because you have the starving artists and all this other stuff. Then you mentioned Harry and the biennial or the
Biennale.
biennale. Yeah. I really think there's one of the things that we have not been able to do. When I was on the Fall River Chamber of Commerce board of directors, and I was also on some other directorial kind of thing, not on the board for New Bedford Chamber of Commerce when there were two separate ones, was a way to bridge the two cities together. Because seriously, especially being in my first marriage with a Fall Riverite and learning the shibboleths, there's a lot of shibboleths in Fall River. They know right away you don't belong there by the way you speak or the way you don't speak, because nobody goes, down the Flint. No matter where you are,
Yeah.
you go up the Flint. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so there's a difference there. So, yeah. And then, we were talking about crossroads and peninsulas, and we were talking about, yes. And you reminded me, Fall River maintained neighborhoods. In New Bedford, you said, where are you from? North End. What the hell's
Yeah.
that? West End.
North End, South End. Like it's so much different here.
So, Maple Park, the Flint,
Yeah.
Flint Village, and I'm
Niagara, Highlands, Lower Highlands. I mean, there's a crazy amount of
neighborhoods
that
have been, at least they've been maintained, so you don't have to resurrect them or remark them, So anyway, it would be great to have a bridge like a biennale for the both cities working cooperatively together. But
I will say, so in all the things that I do, whether it be like straight economic things or, arts and culture, I am really a big proponent of regionalism. I really do think I always feel like people are stronger together, and is it that rising tide lifts all ships? I had never heard that before I started doing this work, and I loved it so much, and I overuse it and I don't care. But it's so true. Like I don't see New Bedford's success or any other body's success as deterring Fall Rivers. If anything, I want to jump on that coattail and then find our own way of doing things. And so for me, I actually speak with once a month, Margot Saulnier and from New Bedford Creative, and I sit down together and we talk about what's going on in her world, what's going on in mine. And we're trying to find ways in which we can bridge the artistic communities. One South Coast Chamber becoming, the New Bedford Chamber and the Fall River Chamber coming together, that has done a lot to regionalize the business community. And they, it took that long to come together. It's going to take a little bit longer to really become cohesive, but this is the time now. This is the time. And we need to realize together, we can make this not just like, 45 minutes south of Boston. That place that's not Boston. That place where, we have to stop thinking about New Bedford and Fall River like this and how we can do this. And then maybe go against everybody else. I'm fine with that as long as we stay together.
Don't forget, was it Mayors Lambert and Kalis crossed an overpass and shook hands in a very, very symbolic gesture.
It's very silly to think there's so much that ties us now. But and Margot and I have talked about the fact that, perhaps it's that, it's okay for Fall River to have its thing and New Bedford to have its thing, but there's no reason why there can't be a Southeastern Mass, South Coast thing that kind of unites us. What that is yet, we're all still working on it. But I think the fact that I have so many, really good, and I mean, not only friends, colleagues, but I appreciate and respect so much things that are going on, not only in New Bedford, but the greater New Bedford area. I used to work up in Marion, the Cape, and Providence. I consider this all to be, let's kumbaya. There's no reason why we can't. I don't see. I mean, I understand people think if you're in Providence, you're better art. That's not necessarily true. I consider a lot of what we're doing here in Fall River to be really risky and like new. And I think to a lot of people who dig arts and culture, like that should be exciting to you. You should want to come and do things here. Like,
well, one of the things about Fall River is they're not risk averse. I was also on the HMS Bounty Committee. Okay, talk about having a set of priorities to say, oh yeah, we're gonna grab this vessel, and we're, you know, and unfortunately things started to unravel, but they had the chutzpah to do what they did, you know, and that's been a wonderful thing. You know, I said, you know, to have a biennale, I'm not going to work on that because, like, you know, I'm getting to a point
there's
where
no more for us. We can't do anymore.
We need to bring more people in, you know, instead. And that's another thing. We used to have a cults of personality, which were fine and good. Like with Dr. Frack, and, you know, he had his cult of personality with his educational dollars there.
Yes.
But when a lot of these personalities pass, so does all those years of work. So so does the momentum and such. So I want to go backwards to two things. One of them, Viva Fall River, but before that, because I'm going to forget again. Fall River Fabric of Fall River.
Fabric Arts Festival.
The Fabric Arts Festival, yes. I was like totally. I came back from Portugal, like, what the heck is that? So
It's
what
awesome.
the heck is that?
It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. So I have been involved since the first one, and I was just actually talking today to the team, and I'm going to be involved in the next one. I mean, it really is such an interesting festival. It was conceptualized by Michael Benavides, who is the co-owner of Portugalia Marketplace, which is arguably one of the best.
Are you kidding me? It's like going home.
I mean, I can't say enough about one of the best marketplaces and just cultural mainstays. I think it taught, what I love about it is it taught a lot of people that, you know, Portugal is not just, I mean, great tile work, great tradition, but there's a whole contemporary art scene. There's very avant-garde things going on there. And so he used to go to Portugal, specifically to the Azores, and go to, and then through going to a couple festivals, he met a couple of amazing, incredible curators and artists there.
Jesse James.
And Sofia Carolina Botello and Antonio Pedro Lopez.
Jesse James was Walk and Talk.
And then Antonio's is Tremor. And then actually Antonio is doing some phenomenal things. He is leading up the effort for the Azores to be the artistic capital of Europe in 2027, I believe it is. It's like this massive, like island wide, you know, thing. So
we got to get the Figueira folks on board of that, man. Let me tell you, that everywhere you go, there's art. That's wow.
I mean, they've done so much to bring so much prominence and attention to the islands, and then also they do a lot of work in Portugal as well, of course. So so the idea is to kind of talk about to talk about the Portuguese diaspora, but in a way of bridging our culture here in New Bedford, but specifically Fall River, you know, South Coast Fall River, and
through fabric
connection, that artistic connection.
Through fabric?
Yes, through Fabric Arts Festival. So fabric has nothing to do with actual fabric. It's the fabric of our
the fabric of our lives. I can hear singing that. And so you know, the idea was to have like a cultural exchange, and most of the, like, you know, artists here doing stuff there, artists there doing stuff here. Thus far, we've only been able to do the first part of it, which is bringing artists from there here, working in some ways with artists here as well. I mean, that's not just, you know, it's not just about bringing people from other places, but there are plans being laid right now about how we're going to do the other side of it. How do we, like, really start an artistic dialogue between the two communities, which are connected by a common culture and a common history, but our realities are really different right now. How do we create art together? How do we, you know, tell that story? And I think, you know, some of the performances that I've seen and some of the things that Fabric has brought to the city, I remember
being in some of these performances and just saying to myself, I can't even believe I'm here. Like not even, I can't even believe I'm in Fall River. I can't even believe I'm in South Coast, Massachusetts. Like, so it was bigger than that. It's really such a gift to the city. I don't know if it's been embraced as much as it should be. And a lot of that, without getting too political or whatever, does come down to the support of the city. And we haven't always had a really stable government here. And I think, our learning curve here is a little different. So there are obstacles here that maybe do not exist in New Bedford and places up in the Cape. But I mean, we work through them. Doesn't mean we're going to stop creating art because people don't understand it. Right. I mean, if everybody did that, if people stopped creating art and doing awesome things because people didn't understand it, nobody would ever get anywhere. You have to keep doing it. And COVID, obviously changed the way you could interact with people. But we put on an incredible event, an outdoor event, having like fado concerts that were specifically taped in Portugal for the Fall River audience, projected onto the walls of the government center. So you have this brutalist architecture, and Fado Bisha was like, are these gay fado singers, like cross-dressing, I'm not sure if that's the right term, excuse me, transgender, excuse me. And I just was like, I was just blown away by this like complete reinterpretation of what you think fado is, and these transgender people doing this amazing, beautiful take on fado and making it their own on the wall of this, stark building.
Well, I mean, even fado itself is, much to the chagrin of the older people. Even my mom is 95, and Marissa is like,
I know.
but my mother was a fado singer in the traditional sense, and but you had, Marissa, who brought so much to it, and then you had Mother Deus, which was another aspect of it, and now this, and then there's the big phenomena of young American girls, not women, girls, who somehow found fado on YouTube, who are not Portuguese, have no Portuguese connections, no cultural connections, and taught themselves how to sing fado.
I have not heard of this. I can't.
Yeah, you gotta Google that. There's one of them. She's at world-class performance level. I don't know what her name is.
I can't wait to. I'm the minute we get off this, I'm going to totally check this out. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by that.
A couple of things too is, I've mentioned on the show a lot of times, and it just occurred to me now. I think we really need. I've always said, in New Bedford, because speaking with New Bedford artists about a junior, senior visual and performing arts high school, because there's a whole section of kids that I swear, if they had this available for them, they wouldn't end up the way they end up as adults. Imagine having it regional between Fall River, New Bedford, junior, senior. Oh, is there? That would be great. That'd be great.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of conversations. I mean, that's why I say with my whole heart when I talk about it, like I wouldn't have left my other job to take this job, which is a huge risk for me, if I didn't believe in Fall River and believe that there's like a lot of really good momentum that I've never seen before. And I know the famous thing people say is, oh, we've done that before, we've tried that before. That's fine. People try things all the time, but if you don't have the right ingredients and it's not the right time, sometimes it's just it's not the idea that's garbage. It's just that it wasn't the right setting, and I also don't think you should ever like discount anything. I mean, a lot of great ideas in life are redos or re-ups of somebody else's thing. Like, I come from the marketing and advertising world, so I mean everything is, so
everything's new.
Yeah,
it hasn't all really been done. It's a little tweak. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's all kind of been.
Yeah. It's a template that has been adjusted constantly. It's formulaic. It's
Absolutely.
a good formula. So you take it from there. The other thing too is Fall River artists, I'm sure, suffer as much as New Bedford artists. Richard Florida came along and said that New Bedford was one of the 9, one of the top 10 in the country. Blah blah blah. We all heard that story. New Bedford has appeared in national and international surveys that place them in the top 10. I think to tell you the truth, that this had more of a mental effect on people. You know, if you believe it, you can achieve it, kind of thing. But the one thing that amazes me is commercial galleries. So it's got to be that 80-20 where most of the artists must be surviving on monies that are coming in from out of town or the furthest away from the area. One of the things that really is needed for the local creative community economy is we need to attract buyers and collectors. And we need people to these people, those people, you know, buyers and collectors, to discover the incredible work that's here. I mean, we do have standout artists.
Oh, absolutely.
In both of our towns that are on.
I grew up here and I didn't know about it.
Yeah,
they're prolific. I mean, your art included, to be honest with you. I've seen your, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know what, but I also at the same time don't understand what made us ever think that we didn't have that. Like, why couldn't we have that? Because other people have that. We're, you know, and I think that, I mean, again, so much of the work that I do is psychology. It's like understanding people, understanding where we all came from, understanding that a lot of our families are from somewhere else where they were kind of like, they felt like they couldn't be there anymore because of the regime. So they came here. You have to understand where people come from. Why would we ever think that we wouldn't have amazing talent here? But we were kind of like in this narrative that, oh yeah, like, you know, we don't have world-class art like that. Yeah, of course we do. Have you seen some of the things that sell online? Have you seen the NFTs? I mean, like,
it's like, whoa, yeah, really?
You know, and I mean, for us, I mean, I love the New Bedford Art Museum so much. And I have to say, I had only been there for the first time when I forget the name of the gentleman that was the photographer for the Obamas.
Peter Souza. Yeah,
Peter Souza.
I interviewed him for Art Scope magazine, and that was phenomenal because
what an incredible exhibit. I mean,
he was a year behind me in high school.
Oh, get out!
And when he finally loosened up, and we were off record, he was because he doesn't like being on the lens side of the camera. He likes being behind the lens. So when we started talking after the interview was over, it was all about the old days at the high school, and you know, and he's also and his mom. I mean, you could see where he came from because his mother was there, and she's, I think, was just in the early vestiges of Alzheimer's. But incredible family, and why he put the show on. So again, we have people of note.
Oh my God! I mean, New Bedford does a great job of leveraging its assets. I mean, and one of the things that I am so proud of, and I'm also proud to call them friends, is you know, Brittany Ann Harvey and Harry Gould Harvey IV, world-class artists through fabric, through their own initiative, and they're just being like amazing people and amazing artists.
They were just in what magazine? National magazine.
Harry was in GQ Style.
GQ, that's right. Yeah.
But they're both like, you know, they bring such cachet and prominence, and they're just really, but beyond. So they formed, for those you who are watching who don't know, the Fall River Museum of Contemporary Art, which is located in the Merrill Manufacturing Mill right now. And the shows are amazing. But their whole ethos is that art, that gallery, is for the people. It's for the community. It's not, yes, they do bring in people that they know, and they do bring in a certain set, the art collectors, the art aficionados, they do bring those people in. If you see the people, their demographics, Brooklyn, I mean, all over.
So they're not just doing the street, you know, like Ugly Gallery in New Bedford and they needed a place for the street artists. They needed, you know, the graffiti artists. They needed that. So Fall River Contemporary has a pretty wide-ranging agenda. So in other words, a guy like me could get in there.
I will say, have you been? You got to come with me. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to do this when the new show comes up. But so the last show they just had was a show by Richard Rinaldi, and it was a show called Fall River Boys, and it was a photography exhibit. And this gentleman, I don't know, I'm hoping I'm going to do the story somewhat of justice, but he was I believe doing photographs in Newport, and he would drive through here, and he would stop off sometimes talking about this the drive through, and he just saw this, and this was in the 90s, and so he just saw like the way this, you know, the
Fall River has a vibe.
Yeah, and so he started taking these black and white photographs of young men, and it's a really telling, it's a really amazing set of work. And in addition to that, they had another room that was just added with this time. I mean, their first time they had just one room, local artists who did some just, really their own pieces. I mean, I think that they provide an opportunity for a lot of people, and they really do want the gallery and the museum to remain connected to the fabric of the city. It is a working class, they want the working class people to feel like they can be a part of that. And I love that about them. And I love that right now they're working with some students at Durfee. I won't give away their whole thing. I'll leave that for their podcast when they come on here. Yeah. But I mean, they are the future of Fall River art.
Are they a selling gallery? Or commercial? I mean, do they have a commercial agenda?
No.
All right.
No.
Just for some reason, people still find that, even the artists still find it icky, because there's always been that push-pull kind of thing.
I think what's funny about them though is that, and I mean, maybe I don't want to talk for them, but I think what goes back to me is when you were saying earlier about you don't necessarily think about art and economy being, two words that people say together. I only started to think about art in all of its forms when I started to connect it to commerce, when I started to connect it to that. Then it started to open up to me like, wow, art can be video, art can be manufacturing, niche manufacturing that we have here in the city, really specialized fiber arts, things that you can't get in other places in the country or even in this region. I mean, it started to broaden my idea of what I thought art was when I saw that art is involved and culture is involved in everything. And I mean, maybe that's more commonplace for other people, but for me it wasn't. I had always seen art as being for somebody else. Like I love museums, but but especially when I was growing up here, I never went to a museum. Absolutely not. I went to a dinosaur museum. I didn't go to like an art museum. Absolutely not. No art classes. Like that was not, and I see that changing. No art classes.
One of the guests on the podcast went to Durfee, right next to Lizzie Borden. His mother and father had Loretta's Variety on Rock Street, and his experience with art, not art, was awful. It was it was kind of how he was managed to get into art school and become an artist was amazing because there was so many things thrown on top of him. I guess not, and again, this is contrast, not to throw anything aspersions on me, but on Belmont Street, the Fall River Art Association, that was the light in the dark. That was the only thing really going for.
And they're having a great, I don't want to say resurgence, because that would do them that would not do them justice. But Dana Barnes, who's the president there, her and I recently spoke, and her goal is to once again make that a place where they have shows that people come from all over to come to. Like that prominence, kind of dissipated, and they became a place where people would send their kids to do art classes, but they are definitely poised to take a much greater role. And I mean, through my work with the Fall River Arts and Culture Coalition, so Viva Fall River, encompasses everything. I mean, I try to do art, culture. My goal is to just be that one central repository where people can come for all the information you want to know about Fall River. But a lot of the arts and culture comes from the Fall River Arts and Culture Coalition, which is like a consortium of like 40 or 50 organizations, artists, individuals, people who are art funders. And we just, it's quite informal right now, I suppose, but we are getting ready to finalize the Fall River's first arts and culture plan, which should be out soon. And I'll be more than happy to share it with you when it comes out. Yeah. But these are good things. Just the fact that we're all working together, we're collaborating, we're trying to find ways in which I send out newsletters to let them know about funding. I know, again, this sounds like if you're from New Bedford, we've already done this, that we haven't had that connection. Everybody feels like they're on their own. And there's no reason in 2021 why you should feel like you should have to, like you're on an island. That's insane.
Artists are isolationists it's genetic.
I wanted to give
I guess. The old joke at the Hatch Street Studios was, okay, well, I came to Hatch Street Studios to have a studio so I could be around other artists. but everyone is working. No one wants to be bothered. We'll say hello in the hallways, but that's as far as it goes. So like I said, when they had the first Open Studios event, it was like, oh my God, now I get to see, I can get to go in and out of somebody else's studio while somebody's watching.
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
and even the frac meetings when we have them, the frac, that's what
Yeah,
the
right.
acronym. Even when we have those, I mean, I have people come up and say, it's just nice to be around hearing what other people are doing. And I guess I take that for granted because that's what I do all day. I just hear about what other people are doing and how we can plug people in. So my thing is I like to know what everybody's doing. But I see how when people are able to engage each other in that way, it opens up, you can see the light bulbs go on. And my whole happiness comes from when like people are like, hey, I'm working on that. That sounds so interesting. Let's work together. Like, that's awesome. Like that's
we
two
need
people.
that cross-pollination. We
And it's
definitely
really,
need
and
it.
that can be really powerful. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big fan of like when people do what they do best, you should go to those people. They're experts. And so when you get those people together, that it can only really, that collaboration can only make it better. I mean, and it also helps you learn how to work with people because it's hard to work with people, but
well, maybe what we need to do is have a big festa.
Oh my God,
just food, and have everybody, show up. And
I think a lot of it is transportation. I've actually talked a lot about doing like art tours or arts and culture tours where and again, sounds silly because we're so close, but taking people.
They go on a bus.
Just having
the other side.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to have Fall River delicacies.
Summer camp.
I mean, you got the meat pies, you got Georgia spinach pies, for God's sakes. You've got, in fact, people would say,
we can come together over meat pies.
I'm going to Fall River. Where should I go? I said, you want Chinese, Portuguese, or Lebanese? And they look at me like, what? I said, I'm telling you, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I got to wind this down. I can't believe it took us this long to end. There's so much more that we've got to do. That's for sure.
I will come back anytime.
Let's make it a date about going to that next opening.
Yes, okay. Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to ask you so we can take this out. Especially in your position, if you had a magic wand, but you only had one wish, and that wish had to come from your heart of hearts, what would you wish for?
I do really wish that, and it's not about how others see Fall River. I wish that the people who lived here would start to, for their own selves too, like, surrounding yourself with negativity and not enjoying where you live and not trying to find the goodness in life. I know that, it takes people sometimes forever, and it takes people die and they never get that. But I really wish that people would accept that Fall River is not the bad place that they've made it out to be. And it really would make me happy if I could get some like to have that support. I think it would just help us all, would help people in areas of their lives that they didn't even know. We do a lot of events, and it's been my greatest joy in the last, even the last 3 months since I've taken this position, when people saying like they've learned things about this place that they never knew. And I want to, these little things that we do, I want that to help change people's lives, and that positivity and that Viva Fall River, which is that rally cry. I always say Viva Fall River is not mine. It's not yours. It's everybody's. And I just want people to feel like that life, like just feeling alive, just feeling like you have something to give, that energy. I just think that without that, life is boring and colorless, and we all need arts and culture in our lives. And
you don't have to pack a lunch to visit each other's city, as the old timers used to think.
Exactly. We're going to create this. We're going to create this tour. I know we are.
Okay. All right. Let's do that. Thank you so much, Patti Rego. Much enjoyed this conversation. And I always tell people, this is not going to be your last time. There's a lot more to this story. Yeah. We definitely got to stay in touch. You'll be our Fall River correspondent.
Oh my God, absolutely. Always come to me.
All right. Well, folks, we're wrapping up another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the Artist Index, the South Coast Artist Index, and sponsored by the great folks at Heavenly Spirits Imports. Thanks. be safe out there, keep smiling, and be kind. That's all you can do.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. The South Coast Artist Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere. Learn more at heavenlyspirits.com. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Be the artist you believe you are, and let's take care of each other out there.